No, you know what's funny? I just learned this. I always thought it was John McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Sonny Sharrock is
On some of it.
Yeah.
They would all like, you know.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
Sonny Sharrock is one of my favorites.
He's insane.
Yeah.
He's insane.
He played with one of my dad's drummers, Fro Knokloff.
Cool.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, and you know, he doesn't get the credit. I mean, sure, John McLaughlin is doing like his heavy riffs and stuff.
Yeah,
but
that's
Sonny
usually-
Sharrock has that great sound. You know.
I think it's because of their skin color.
I don't know. I don't know why he didn't get any credit. I mean, Miles Davis is getting the credit.
Sonny Sharrock is like one of the best. He does not get enough credit.
He doesn't.
And he's one of the best. Like,
Yeah.
He does wild stuff that's out there, but he's also really put together and does a lot of
He can
really.
play like just heavy blues.
Yeah,
if he
yeah.
wants, he can do whatever he wants.
One of my favorite albums is called Many Mansions. It's Pharoah Sanders.
Oh yeah.
Really good album.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
I don't understand.
Is it?
Oh, I see. I got it.
Okay, cool. We're about to. I was getting pretty rowdy at the mountain.
Fucking spread my.
Music's great because I didn't choose it.
Why can't we see anything?
So.
I don't know why we can't see anything. I'm sorry. It's just I haven't.
Well, you do that. I'll talk about it.
Yeah, talk to it.
So I was doing my thing at the mountain, and there was a guy who was a professional videographer, and he was with a friend, and they do stuff with like Hollywood and stuff like that, and they grew up around Charlemont, and one of them saw what I was doing and said, "Hey, can I make a video of you?" And I said, "Sure." And so he spent the day filming me. He had this special camera that could program onto me, and it would stay with me. And he was good too. So we were doing like 40 down the mountain. And he could have the camera like in my face, pretty much. And then he said to make a video, and he made like an amazing video. Oh, that's cool. That's what's up.
Is that last winter?
Is that real?
Yeah, that's real.
What does that mean?
It doesn't mean anything. What
It's
do
a
you mean?
glitch in the Matrix?
No, it's a window it's a display capture because I don't know how we're gonna.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so let's do
Yeah, infinity.
That's so cool.
Infinite.
So here.
But it's cool. So we made this video, and then I got a light sponsorship for snowboarding because of it. And now I took time off from these things to be intellectual and try to use the white privilege that I've been brought up around to help my ancestors and their offspring have a better future in this country. And so my writing and things like that are really important to me, but it's also really nice to get back into the wildness of.
Is this up in Charlemont, or is this?
Yeah, this is at Berkshire East. So this is the same place where the biking, those jumps were filmed. Yeah. And this day, so in particular, if you look, you can see that it's sheer ice.
Yeah, that's the New England ski run.
Yeah,
It's ice.
so I do these things I'm doing. There's a reason why there's not other people there doing them. And my signature, if I could have, I would have not worn a shirt.
It's
but
too cold.
It's too cold, so I had to cover up at least my nipples.
A couple of Band-Aids.
But it helps me to know I'm vulnerable. That's my thing. I also, my main job is clearing land and doing really technical tree work. I've been doing that for 10 years. And it's extremely dangerous if you are not focused.
Yeah. Every couple months you read about some tree guy getting it.
Yeah, because a lot of people, it's good money, so people who don't know what they're doing think they're going to make some quick money, and they get hurt. But I'm really focused. I've been doing it for a long time. The guy I work with, Keith Harmon Snow, is one of the best ever. He's also my mentor. Yeah, so.
Yeah, the music is good with this.
I know, he did good.
That's cool. I like that move.
That's sick.
Yeah, very innovative on that little wooden plank.
That you're nailed to.
But yeah, so I had to do. It's cool, you know, filming with somebody else because.
What's he on?
Huh?
Is he on skis or what?
He's on a snowboard.
Snowboard. Too.
That was cool. So it's hard to tell how high up that is, but it's very, very high up. It was a spur of the moment thing.
He's getting real smooth
Yeah. It's
filming, even though he's
It's
on
a
a board.
very-
You don't see any jumping or bumping. Or,
Very he had this gimbal and it program. It was really
Good.
something.
That's so sick. Yeah, this is great footage.
Yeah, he did. I was so psyched. He was like, "Wait till you see this footage," and I was like, "Okay." But also, it's cool to have to, you know, you gotta push yourself because you're getting filmed. But if you get hurt, there's no more filming,
Yeah.
and it's all happening in one day. You gotta squeeze it all in, and there's something about that that's just like the next day when I went snowboarding, I was like 5 times better than this, and I was like, oh man, I wish that filming was today, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, this is pretty good. Is this on YouTube or on
This is on
This is
Vimeo.
on Vimeo.
Vimeo? And what's it called?
Called
It's just me,
Elon Edit. Rough cut. It's a rough cut. So that means there'll be more?
Yeah, he's pretty. You know, I wanted him to film biking. He just doesn't. It wouldn't be the same because he's not really a biker. So he's pretty. This like inspired him. He wants to keep. He's like, oh, I can't wait to, you know. And it's funny, you know, I'm gonna be where I left off. You know, every season, it kind of reminds me of plants. You know, there's like annuals and perennials and things, and it's like I've always had to, you know, change what I'm doing for the seasons. It's like going from, you know, okay, now I can't bike or tennis or whatever. I gotta do the winter stuff, and then you go back and forth. But places where people can do those things all year round, it's like they're incredible at it. You know, they don't have these breaks in the seasons, and so I'm kind of looking to be more of like an annual or a perennial rather, where I can keep biking all year round and also do the snowboarding all year round, and also write and, you know, do my videos and things like that. So I'm looking for
You want
places
to be in
like that.
like either Colorado or California.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Mexico. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Utah.
Into that right now.
Utah.
All right, we got 17 minutes till John's section.
Okay,
What
so
do you
the
wanna
next one would be the video on
Revolution or If Stephen King Was Black?
if Stephen King was black. Because Cummings, right? The guy, special man. Is it Elijah Cummings?
E.E. Cummings?
E.E. Cummings. He just passed away.
Oh no! Oh, I know who you mean. Yeah, Elijah Cummings.
Yeah, Elijah Cummings just passed away, and so I made a video dedicated to him, playing the drums and some music I made, and it's showing the footage of Selma
Okay.
because it's powerful and it goes long. And if you can't hear what
If Stephen King was black, Obama would not be president. OJ would have gotten guilty without a trial. Except a black car would be technologically advanced. Cars that navigate themselves, sonic distribution, portable wings. Rocketeer would also therefore be black. Disneyland would be scary and real. Darwin would have been black. Google Gadgets engineer would be black. Malcolm X would have been mixed race. Carl Sagan ran the blackest gang in Omaha. If Stephen King was black, therefore Stephen Hawking is black too. Einstein invented
tell
coffee
us
for 10
about
minutes
this.
on a coffee break. Bees Einstein
can we turn it up in here a little bit?
Killer bees. And Einstein was the father of women. Stephen Hawking hangs out with Mike Tyson, Nike, Black Panthers, Panthers like every other morning at the Blackest House, Washington,
books. I write by hand.
Big meat eggs and Benedict with fresh
My
eggs
first
and
book is
ham.
called
Dr.
Organic
Seuss
Intelligence,
black mice.
which is about the psychosis of artificial intelligence, and it has to do with what it, you know, the craze of organic food and all this stuff that people want to be organic, but yet they function based on artificial intelligence, which which has to do with exploiting human beings first and foremost, and secondly, the environment, which is why we have environmental issues, is first and foremost from exploiting human beings, which are inherently the environment also, because traditionally, historically, evolutionarily, natives are the environment. As human beings, we evolved not being separate from the environment. And so to objectify the environment like it needs our help is also part of that disassociative artificial intelligence. And so organic intelligence I started writing when I was about 22 years old. It took me 6 years to write. And I never thought it would be published, and then it was. So I wrote a second book called Lucid, which is, I felt guilty about making things up in my first book, which was to make, you feel like to get people interested, you have to make things up, and like your life isn't enough and it's not interesting enough. That's really not the case most of the time. And so I found in that book that the most vulnerable things that were about me were the things that people came up to me and talked about and appreciated. And so it inspired, and also a lot of the books people thought I was influenced by I'd never heard of. And so they would say, oh, have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? And they'd bring me all these materials to read, and that was one of the most inspiring things about publishing writing in a book. And so my second book is called Lucid, and I tried to be as vulnerable as I could be, and it's a conversation, an internal dialogue about being black and white. And so when I say you in that book, it's talking to me as either black or as either white, which is not actually how I think, but I was doing it to point out the absurdity of having to identify as mixed race when everyone is mixed race, and if we weren't, it would be incestual. If we all have ethnicities, and so when someone tries to, force me to choose whether I'm my mom or my dad, that's actually part of white supremacy and the language structure that goes along with that is part of the social construction of whiteness, which only happened to allow skin color-based slavery. And so to me, I try to point that out as often as I can when people talk about being mixed or try to identify me as being mixed, because they also have two different ethnicities or more, lots of them, just like everyone else, and we are all mixed race. And unfortunately, the social construction of whiteness in its disassociative way tries to think of white as this pure thing that doesn't need to have ethnicities. It's pure, but is really actually made up, and there is no place where whiteness is from. It's not a place in the world. Okay.
Good point.
So yeah, Lucid was great. I do a lot of readings of that book, and the audience would come there for different reasons. Some people didn't know what they were getting into, and some people did. And one of the most powerful experiences was this woman from Alabama who was there. She was African American. There was 3 other African Americans, and I think about 80% of the people would identify as white until maybe they left that reading. But it's a pretty abrasive book because I'm actually criticizing my own whiteness for possibly leaving my blackness behind. And so I'm saying, it's kind of you think you can function with these people and assimilate to being white and leave me behind. So it's kind of this frustrating thing where it's trying to call me back and say, no, you have to help, and you cannot leave me behind. And it's made up. I don't really think like that, but it's kind of pointing out the pressure that happens in a society where you're constantly not understood and put into a category that is secondary to being pure white or pure black, or when really white is all sorts of ethnicities, and so is black. Black is different places too. There's no black place where black is from. It is a made-up term. You could be Congolese, you could be Senegalese, you could be all sorts of things, and then there are all little things in between there too. So, in order to make to really make it to make things correct and be logical, we cannot disassociate from reality and use terms that are disassociative. And so yeah, this is just extremely powerful footage. But so my third book, since I'm on that subject, is called Escape from Liberty, and that's a study that I did on revolution in this country. Well, slave revolts really, and how they shaped the freedom of everyone. Beside, because it's not, imperialism never needed to fight for freedom. They fight to keep freedom, to make freedom less possible. And so there's this idea that freedom in this country is due to the change of mind of wealthy elitism, and saying that, oh, thank God they allowed freedom and they emancipated slaves, and really that's not the case. Freedom is due to people who have fought for it and have risked their lives and died. And I thought it would be interesting to try to write a book about appreciating the actual people who fought for freedom. So rather than a president who owned slaves and teaching children about, to basically glorify genocide, it'd be better to teach about these slaves and the details of their escaping slavery to freedom.
What is the third book's title?
Escape from Liberty.
Escape.
And that publisher is in Puerto Rico. They're a feminist publisher, and they do books on race, and so I was really blessed to be able to get published by them. And the book has a lot to do with black feminism, because in my studies I found that most slave revolts were initiated by slave women. They were so frustrated with having to give their children, or basically give birth to slaves over and over, and have to think, that whole time while they were pregnant, what their baby was going to go through. And we know now with epigenetics that there's transfer with trauma. And I, along with other prominent professors, it's becoming more popular in trying to understand how the trauma of thinking about what your child is going to experience while in the womb is really deeply affected the genes of that life, and for generations. And so we also know now post-traumatic stress disorder, there's different treatments for it, postpartum, all sorts of treatments for it. And if people are untreated, if women go untreated, it's not healthy. And so we're talking about these untreated issues for hundreds of years. And so, what type of what can help? The issue becomes just kind of, it's good to be aware of what the issue is rather than think, oh, how can we fix it? I'm not saying I know how to fix it, but it's important to even know what's going on, and just to be aware of what's happened in this country, instead of blaming people. And just in order to be compassionate, it's important to know what's happened here, and to know where we're going. We didn't know where we came from. So so that book ended up being kind of about black feminism. And hey, come on, puppy. Hi. Come on up.
You need help? Okay.
And so
I think a lot of people are doing that genetic test now, 23, whatever it's called, and finding out that they are all these things they never knew they were.
Right.
The mix that they
Well,
are. They
and
think,
we
I'm
all come from Africa,
Belgian or something, right?
So I mean, if you're in France and you went up to someone and you're American and white, and you said, "Hey, you're white too. Thank God." Someone, or whatever, you're white too. They'd be like, "No, no, I'm not." Like a French person who's light skinned does not think of themselves as the same as an American white person. They might be even insulted by that because they have an ethnicity. It's French.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to call themselves white because slavery didn't happen like that there. It happened a different way. So, it's important to understand the sociology, you know what? That's light talk. I call that soft genocide. It's really a genocide. We're talking about genocide when we talk about the hierarchy of who is important and who is not. That when we talk about white, we're talking about who's important and who's not. Because that's it. The whole reason it was founded was to make it possible for people to be dehumanized and exploited. And it's important to talk about humans as a resource rather than there's all this progressive white liberalism about exploiting resources, and it's really not about exploiting resources. It comes from exploiting human beings, and it's easier to talk about saving the earth and to fix the earth than it is to talk about people who are starving, because those people who are starving, there's vengeance involved now because it's been happening for so long. And so it's easier to talk about inanimate things that aren't going to directly affect. Like the environment's not going to talk back and say, "Oh, well, you haven't helped me for long, so I'm not going to help you." So this is, I did this here the other day upstairs. They let me use that room. It's so cool.
Is this the dance room?
Yeah.
Did you take your shoes off?
No, I had to be quick. There was a group coming in. But it's pretty
Music? Is that you?
This is all my
Singing?
music, yeah. And I'm reading a poem off my phone I just wrote. It's isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really getting, now I'm noticing all the turbines and things, and I'm like, oh, I should put that in all my videos.
And then you asked me.
This is a interview with Angela Davis. It's called On Violence.
That just doesn't make any sense at
Is
all.
that in the Black Power mixtape?
Yes, and it's one of my favorites.
Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment someone who might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like,
What you see on screen right now is what
What's going on?
they can see.
Can I instead of this, can I use the last of my time to do Violet Revolt? It's
Yeah,
called.
sure. Yeah.
Is this on non-channels as well?
On YouTube and Twitch and
It's not on 12 or 15 or...
No, it's on 12.
It's on 12?
a very empowering. I always want to write children's books, and then I'm like, for what children,
You can write a children's
We're all
book.
children.
Yeah.
I know, but what can children handle? That's the
Children can handle a lot.
Well, I mean, we do. I mean, they teach them about Thanksgiving and genocide, and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's the wrong heroes. All right, so can I hear this in here?
It'll be feedback, but they can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Check out the sound.
Let me just get a feel for it. Okay, I can't hear the music, but I'm gonna read this anyways. It's called Violet Revolt. That's violet, okay? The color violet. Revolt. She accidentally looked back into eternity, and it is telling her things, constantly questioning whether it could have been on purpose. She wishes it had told her about the day that she went missing for too long. She is still missing so many things that happen, and those as close as possible. She is missing them too. She existed to be this close to missing everyone forever, everyone missing her forever, missing her orange kisses and purple thoughts. He left messages in blue in her thoughts to see if it would make a shady spot in the bright yellow sun. This is where they would sit and possibly lay down. There were so many shimmering waves in the grass that loose clothing rippled. Her dress was waving to the clouds, being emptied by the sunshine. If they were to lay in bent grass blades, could it be the last time? The last time the blades bent back and the feeling of beauty penetrating hearts couldn't let go. The last thing they could ever want, no turning back. Time is bending the blanket. Time decided to take some space to itself, to get back to nature, and living with things we cannot stop. Life kept being left in the street with holes made in it by fear and hatred that is white. Life kept being told by whiteness that it was not real. In this space that time took to itself, the institution of white needed to become colorful like rainbows, and had it documented in its constitution that it needs to become different shapes and different sounds that may be hard for it to resonate with, while investing in such militant social systems of oppression overflowed from slavery in order to become a space other than time allows for a short duration, yet brutally, eternally, and ending now as today unfolds, and life proves it to be real as time rips it apart openly, and in its institution of white judges itself into the panic of being so insensitive that vengeance has no other shapes, colors, or sounds to choose other than violent revolt.
Yep.
Violet made handprints in clay as a small child while reserving words for family that were taken from her. She smiled into the abyss of pleading that it is too late for forgiveness, a silence of the white institution that could no longer be a burden in space for time to want anything to do with it ever again. Violet was intimate with the space that time took to itself. She nourished it with colors, intelligence, senses, shapes, love. Merciless, unforgiving power and purple thoughts were always encouraged. Violet's orange kisses burned into the early morning, making the institution of whiteness a kind of blue. All that was left of it was confused and squinting at the colors of its new shape. It was demanding to know how long the spell had been on them, and what to do now. Violet explained in senses and climate-changing shapes of darkness and bright red lava and flashing pink clouds that there is no now. Part 2. I hope you like my shape of communication. I hope you can appreciate the brutality of the beauty in decomposing the unnecessary manifestation of apocalypse. The writer wants you to know it's him. The narrator wants you to know it's her. The sentence is time taking space to itself. Grammar is more of a blue than purple. The shape is the sense of confusion, which is also the orgasm of realizing eternity. The details are up to your imagination, not mine or the author or writer, or brackets, black divided by white, parentheses, black women divided by white women, plus during slavery and after, parentheses, plus Americans, parentheses, to make the sex trade of slavery possible, parentheses, political, intellectually engineered institution, bracket, parentheses, mixed race, parentheses, native, parentheses, black, African, the rest of the world, not isolating themselves in the social construction of whiteness, equals having to create my own language because I don't exist like I need to in the institution of whiteness. Parentheses, I have to feel it more than it feels me, on parentheses. That has a completely different meaning and purpose of imagined structure or patterns or symbols that outnumbers mathematics that are statistical boundaries invested in the language that power is behind it, somewhere that can only be found by using itself. It's uncomfortable for me to write the things I feel without feeling the need to prove their value to you, to build a relationship and undo it before we get too comfortable with each other. I know that you will never forget this during all your desperate imagination of reading and life, a thread that is undeniable through shapes, colors, and sounds, but grammarless rhythm with more sensual texture than colonial organization and its friend decolonization, making love instead of war most of the time. So this, again, is why time has taken space to itself. The shapes of objectification in our solar system layering our consciousness with objectifying existence in space unimaginably vast, then gone all of the sudden. Actually, assumptions are our specialty, so we are intimate with them and emotive beyond anything real. Vibrations sound like waves and look like shapes. She surfed on the shape of waves. She lives on the shapes of waves, balancing them with focus and intent. Of course, she is going to use the most obscene language of the oppressor to react and demand the same brutal trauma is being redirected by her with exponential adaptivity as aggressively as colonialism on the institution of whiteness. That changes little details of its shape to suit its foundation as the need for free labor based on her skin color, and also the genes of her skin color, by association, allow enslavement of light-skinned hymns. Section 3. The flowers sat at the drum set to communicate spring. Some felt uncomfortable and decided to advocate for the drums. The drums are symbolic, not just the symbols. Why should the symbols get all the credit as being symbolic? As a gesture of listening, acceptance, and understanding, guns turned to hyacinth flowers and jasmine bullets. The fragrance took violence over with a brutal ferociousness no one knew flowers had. That same sunny day, I became 6 shades darker in the growing power of the sun. That morning, the same perspectives of my identity changed twice. In the morning, the institution of whiteness declared a false sense of solidarity with how I looked to them. That evening, they ignored me like that never happened. They were squinting with confusion and nodding at each other. The institution of whiteness was making a habit out of black identity, settling with the concept that being black is having holes from their police and being silenced on the street or in the passenger seats of cars with their families. The institution of whiteness was making it a custom to advertise being black as dying. A Rwandan orchid blossomed right at that moment. The International of Whiteness abruptly spit out their coffee and stood together in disbelief. The sheer unexpected beauty became an unbearable pressure on their hearts. The heart, since this orchid blossomed, the shape of the institution of whiteness did not allow anyone but themselves to have a heart. This realization that the others had hearts was a serious need for a group huddle. These others with hearts, we must assimilate with them as soon as possible. It might have been the deep fragrance of hyacinth and jasmine, she thought aloud, or maybe the purple thoughts. But then again, violet played a huge part in paving the way for the blossoming orchid. Cushioned by bent grass blades and a timeless blanket, they intertwined in the shade of the bright yellow sun.
Yeah.
Oh, sick.
Right.
Sick.
That's
Thank
really good.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks for showing
Now, would it be
us.
cool to have you reading that as you're skateboard, as you're skiing down the hill?
Isn't
That
that
would be cool.
Isn't that the plan or no?
I'm trying to incorporate them both, but it's difficult.
I think it would be.
But that's the first time I have a publisher who's publishing these poems, but I have not read them to any.